Welcome to the ADHC Talks podcast, produced by the Alabama Digital Humanities Center at the University of Alabama Libraries. I'm your host, Sarah Whitver. This video podcast documents digital humanities research through semi-structured conversations with DH scholars and practitioners.
Today, our guest is one of our graduate students. We like to do graduate student highlights. And our guest today is Aidan Miles-Jamison, who is an art history graduate student, an MA student here at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Aidan's research specializations are in print visual cultures of Japan, queer feminist and post-humanist theoretical approaches to the arts of Asia, and nurturing community-engaged digital humanities scholarship by creating fan websites. And he's a big fan of the ML manga anime, rhythm games, and his 2 fluffy cats. So we're probably going to talk about those in a little while.
Definitely.
So Aidan, do you have anything else that you would like to add that you want us to know about you before we start our conversation?
Yeah, I mean, emphasis on the fan website side of things. I think we'll get into that, but that's definitely where I've gotten into digital humanities, is through a kind of fan community in the digital world, making my own website and hand coding it. So that's where I've gotten into this realm. So
yeah. So when I first met you, you came because you were thinking about having a digital component to your master's thesis, like a digital project component, and for a short period of time, we were talking about putting an Omeka collection together, an Omeka archive of some of this fan art, which is many different modes and genres of materials. And it was too big of a project for your master's thesis, for sure.
Yeah.
Kind of a lifelong situation, but it was really fun to hear you talk about different components of your research and just how it's grown out of your own experience. So my first question for all of my guests is always, I want you to tell me a little bit about your research, but I'm specifically interested in what makes you feel nerdy and excited.
Okay, awesome. Well, what makes me feel nerdy and excited is definitely Boys Love Manga, which is a genre of manga. It's basically like gay manga, gay comics from Japan, also from China and Korea. And so I've been a fan of the genre since like late high school. Growing up in the US South, I was like starving for gay representation in a way that just wasn't Sam Smith. That was basically all I had in kind of the American context. So I was looking for something different. And there's a huge world of this manga since the 1970s. And so that's where my thesis kind of takes hold, is I research one of the kind of first super popular manga series of this genre called BL. That's probably how I'll refer to it from here on out. BL is short for Boys Love. And so it's called Poem of the Wind and Trees. So I analyzed that manga text, that manga series, 17 volumes, in relation to kind of 1920s, similar images of beautiful boys and girls magazines, and then trace that to the 1970s. I talk about the kind of various social justice movements these illustrations worked alongside of, like women's liberation movements, ideas of new women in the 1920s, modern girls in the 1920s, in the 1970s, queer feminist women's liberation movements in Japan. And then finally kind of conclude with a rumination or a thought on my mobilization digitally, but also with a fan club in Tuscaloosa and a zine production here locally, and talking about how the love of BL and gathering around these texts kind of creates social justice outcomes in my local community. So that's kind of my thesis research, and where the Omeka project that we were talking about just a second ago, the digital project, was going to kind of fit into, but didn't quite make it to the end cut. So maybe, that's future directions for sure. So yeah, what makes me nerdy and feel nerdy is definitely BL manga.
I think I think that's a really common response whenever I've talked about your project to other folks, and I talk about the fact that it's about BL, and people are like, Like that saved my life. And I'm
Yeah,
really
yeah.
interested in that particular, like, I think for people who grew up with access to the internet,
Mhm.
which, my generation did not have access to the internet when we were young.
Mm.
My family got our first computer when I was a senior in high school, and
Wow.
we still had like text message boards that were public to the entire world.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It was before Yahoo became huge.
Hmm. Hmm.
So like that particular, I guess, ability to everybody have this experience of like awakening and self-recognition
Hmm.
with this piece of material that came out pre-internet, but the people that I talked to all found this home on the internet with BL and really feel like it's like super foundational to their self-awakening and self-actualization and their ability to express themselves.
Yeah.
um, so what do you think about that just as a cultural thing? I'm not going
Yeah,
to ask you super personal questions, but like
sure.
culturally, how do
Hmm.
how do you think that happened?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So, I mean, there is kind of in thinking about the history of BL, it started in the 70s, and then it grew in popularity in Japan until about the 90s and 2000s. But that is the around the birth of the internet, right? And people getting access. And pretty soon after that happened, I mean, lots of Japanese media, popular media, especially manga and comics, got kind of proliferated or entered the web, and people started to kind of gather online on these public message boards, on personal website creations.
Mhm.
And so that's when we see BL kind of go international, especially to fan communities in North America for sure. And since then, I mean, there's just only since the 1990s and the 2000s, there's just been this massive increase of scanlations, like kind of pirated, community-led translation efforts
Yeah.
that are freely published online in tons and tons of different languages of very many BL texts. And so that's definitely I don't think you could separate me and the communities I'm involved in here, identifying and finding a space of belonging in BL and in these texts without, you can separate that from the digital and from access to the internet. But it kind of is an interesting point we're at because, the community I think we're in is often, it's not just in person, right? It's kind of online and then not really specific to a location, right? It's kind of maybe it's English dominant, right? That's the language that we would use. But if you're an English speaker in any way, it starts to intertwine. And then many of us, as we were involved in scanlation groups, start to study a bit of Japanese or Chinese or Korean, we then start to enter these other communities. And so that's where I kind of am, is in this international in-between space. And so many users through the internet are also learning not just programming languages, but also these other foreign languages. And it becomes like a means of cultural exchange as well and cultural
Yeah.
understanding.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I have a good friend whose brother is quite a bit younger than me, at least, and
Mm.
is an undergraduate, and apparently has taught himself
Mm.
Japanese in order to be
Awesome.
able to translate manga. And I think that is
Yeah.
just such an example of experiential learning and like how we could leverage curriculum based on interest and like usable skills. I think that's really interesting. It's a thing that I don't know if it's been explored too very much. I haven't looked for it, at least. It's not my area of research, but it
Sure.
is fascinating to consider that, because I think many people have taught themselves these skills because of a need or a desire that they have outside of like a work structure or a school structure.
Mhm.
I know I started learning HTML when I was in graduate school,
Mhm.
but it really I became obsessive about like copying the page source of a website that I liked and then trying to recreate it.
Yep, I do that same thing.
Yeah.
So,
And it's just like such a puzzle to untangle,
mhm,
and it's so much
mhm,
fun. It's like what part of it is CSS? And then,
mhm,
when I first started doing it, it was the early 2000s and
mhm.
people were using a lot of JavaScript, which I did not know.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've learned all of these things, and I'm
Mhm,
definitely not an expert. And one of the things that holds me back is that I'm not a graphic designer. And so I
mhm,
can
mhm,
create all of this
mhm.
infrastructure, but it doesn't
Yeah,
look fantastic.
sure, sure.
Tell me a little bit about the beginning of your digital creation. Like,
Mhm, mhm.
where did it start?
Yeah, yeah. So, I would say, growing up online as a kid, right? My generation were online. But outside of that, from a young age, NeoCities is this free online web hosting service that kind of takes the name of GeoCities, which was an early kind of around the 2000s space for people to create their personal websites, hand code them, HTML, CSS, as you're talking about JavaScript. And it's called NeoCities because it's attempting to kind of recreate GeoCities and the community of, instead of the internet being dominated by um, large search engines and ad-based ways in which the web results are organized, right? It's kind of encouraging everyone to have their own kind of website that is listed online with a bunch of other ones, right? Instead of being dominated by search engines. So I found out about this community in 2021, I think, or 2020, and started making my own, learning copy exactly as you're saying, copying HTML and CSS from websites I like, but then trying to kind of make it my own and meld them together to make the website I wanted. And I soon found myself as part of the reason I kind of got on there was because there's tons of fan communities like BL adjacent and manga adjacent communities. And I also sought to like represent myself online in a way that I could completely control, rather than Instagram, which gives you a pre set profile, that you have to you can't adjust where your icon is or the size of your posts or anything like that. I wanted, yeah, to be in complete control and that transformative power of the internet. So I had to, kind of learn HTML and CSS and all of that. And so I soon found myself as part of a greater community of BL readers on this website. And there's a lot of kind of things called like fan listings, which is this process of people creating a public registry where you put your name, your website, and you then, once you submit that to a person who like kind of runs the fan listing, you get listed amongst other fans who are, yeah, fans of whatever the fan listing is of, right? And so then you're listed with all of these people and you can go through their website. So the way of organizing and navigating the internet becomes less about Google or anything like that. It's just through people that are in a similar community or have similar loves and passions to you, like in the fan listing, or there's also web listings and fan rings. So just like rings of websites that stack alongside of each other that you can just kind of click through as we're all gathering around. I mean, even things like outside of like if you're trans or if you are queer or if you are into accessibility, like there's lots of infinitely as many kinds of fan web listings and rings possible. So that's where I kind of got into digital humanities and is thinking about, I was in this community that was not academic. Where there was tons and tons of passion and love, and we were all kind of gathering around ideas of BL or let's say manga we enjoyed or identities we have. Um, and we were doing that online. And as we kind of continuously did that and were motivated to learn HTML, learn CSS, all of these things and transform our digital worlds, I was like, I think this is a breath of fresh air and a lot of power that I really appreciate and interest in accessibility that I don't necessarily see in my current world of art history. And so I wanted to kind of start to bring my scholarship, which I do, for my degree in a university institution, to these people because there is such a, and communicate with them and work with them because there is such a diverse, creative passion there that I think would really strengthen my research at the time. So kind of since then, it's been an experiment of merging these worlds and trying to work between them and maybe hopefully, yeah, actually kind of integrate them someday. So
Yeah. I really appreciate the kind of way that your project started as just like this pure public digital humanities project outside of the academic sphere. And as you made your way through your academic journey, you just drew on it rather than it's not, you didn't change it. Its nature is exactly the same as it was before. And also, like, your scholarship is very respectful of what it is, right? There's a lot of there's a fan communities tend to be gift economies.
definitely.
And there's a lot of giving, and there's a lot of sharing and a lot of generosity that happens among people who connect with each other. And when somebody pulls that outside of that context and gets personal gain, sometimes it is not received well within the community. But it sounds like the way that you've navigated this has been very transparent, and your establishedness within the community before your scholarship happened also probably made it easier to communicate because everybody already knew who you were.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
that's really interesting, and it's a really it's a good model. I think a lot of researchers in the future are going to be very interested in like just the methodological way that you accomplished what you're doing.
Yeah. So I think that made me think about, especially I've made several fan listings, fan web listings. And so again, that's where fans can submit a little form and then be listed among other fans for this source media. And I've done that pretty much with with several grad seminar class papers, which I've written about some manga or some, media. And so I guess I then, will have typically a link to somewhere on that fan web listing, just one page to the kind of essay I wrote, right? Which is very academic and meant for an academic audience. But in general, like, I do make that fan web listing as a generous thing, one, I guess, to my teachers. It's like that's not expected within the curriculum of the class, but making a fan web listing is, an amalgamation, getting a bunch of images that you love and appreciate of the source media, and then putting them together, creating an asset website for people to gather, right? So there is still that generous emphasis. And I would say even with the Omeka project that I kind of proposed, it was also kind of creating a digital archive of all of these fan artifacts, digital artifacts, and putting them together for everyone to kind of engage with. And so I've done, instead, I'm in the process of making a fan web listing for the Poem of the Wind and Trees, which is the BL manga I'm writing on in my thesis. So I think that's an interesting point that I hadn't totally linked, is that there's this emphasis on generosity as a way of, I haven't quite done any sort of, I don't know, extractive or taking, kind of going out of that context. Yeah, I don't know what that would necessarily look like, but it's all emphasis. Like, I use my role and the resources I have as a academic student, as a university student, to make things in this community, and then kind of have them relate to the like formal paper that I've created in the institution. And then typically the link will exist in the paper in the formal institution, right? For my professors to kind of be like, oh, what is this world of fan stuff? But then for the fan community, it's like they can click this tab that says academic essay or fan essay, is typically how I put it. And for them to kind of, politely engage with. But the majority is, they're still kind of separate. So those are big questions of like, could they be integrated someday, or what would that look like, and how would it not be extractive? But yeah.
Yeah. I also think what you just said sort of occurred to me as like, oh, that's something that I hadn't considered. that you invite your professors into your other life.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is, that is a fairly intimate thing to do in a way,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
Like, does that make you feel exposed? And how do you feel like, how does that, do you do it because you need them to understand where you're coming from as a scholar? Like what, because your relationship with your professors, is based on your scholarship, and it's a professional relationship.
Yeah.
So I'm curious
merging the personal and
how have they responded to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really positive because I am going above and beyond the expectations of the essay, right? Length, like it'll be a 15 to 20 page paper, and I'm making like this website, right? And that seems, I think they're in general very excited about that, and they can feel the love and the excitement that I have for it. But so and the links for these web listings, they're hosted on my website, my personal website, which is the more personal. Like I have my like original character on there, and that would be a bit more personal, right? But the link I give them is just kind of to that separate half of my website. It's just hosted, on the parent website, and so then they really only can get into. But if they really tried, if they deleted a portion of the URL, they would get to my parent website, right? And so I mean, I think I would be okay with that. But yeah, I definitely like, even for this podcast, like, and thinking of which links I wanted to give you for the podcast, there is this tension of this online creation of person that is very real to me and very personal. And then linking that to my professional. It's not something, there is this, vulnerability that I don't know if I'm quite ready to integrate yet. So maybe that speaks to like something I can ruminate or think about of, integrating fan and academic spaces, which, there's a lot of literature, and there's also a lot of conferences, especially in manga studies, where these spaces are kind of interwoven, but there's a lot of vulnerability kind of wrapped up in a lot of this and the personal experience. So, but in general, it's been very positive, but it's still something that I'm working on. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of your projects, do you have anything that you would like to show us?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely could show you the zine I made.
Okay.
Totally.
I'm going to make sure that you can share. I think you can already, but I'm just going to go in here and make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And walk us around something if you'd like.
Yeah, totally. Let's see. Share. Awesome. All right. You can see the content.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so the Omeka project kind of didn't happen, right? But I'm still very interested in like a lot of local community stuff. So as part of my thesis, I started a fan club, local fan club through the university and Tuscaloosa. So we have some local Tuscaloosa residents and university members, and that's been going for about a year now. And then also I wanted to do a zine. And so a zine, a self-published booklet, comes from the term fanzine, right? And this has been distributed now about 100 copies throughout Tuscaloosa, and it's also accessible online. And so we're looking for submissions for volume 2. So if you're watching this and you're interested in kind of reflecting on masculinity and boyhood through a creative, written, or artistic response, please feel, we're looking for excellent submissions. So we would love to publish your work. And so the reason how this ties to BL, quote unquote, gay manga, is I was thinking about what is a similar thing, or what is a symptom or a theme that I see in all BL manga, and that is an obsessive questioning and playing with masculinity and what it means to be a boy. Because I was thinking about, this is a foreign media, right? I'm an American, right? And from the Southern United States. And this is a media that started written by women predominantly women in the 1970s, and then is still predominantly written by women for a women reading audience. And they're depicting gay, homoromantic, homoerotic relationships, right? So there's a lot of, I won't go into that, but there's a lot of kind of distance or difference wrapped up in just the original context, right? Women writing men, straight women often writing gay men, right? And so in this case, I'm a Southern American fan who is not Japanese, right? And is appreciating this media and organizing around it. And so I wanted to kind of bring my scholarship to a local context and to a digital context that I'm familiar with, but how to kind of make it useful for them. I didn't just want to appropriate and just like make a zine or make a series of images that were just taking from this original context, this source material. I wanted to make it useful for them. So I thought that the kind of process of making BL, which is very interested in how boys interact, what it means to be a man, what it means to love other men, and definitely, through the process of reading manga, kind of obsessively taking pleasure in their beauty or their looks, right? So I kind of came to these 4 questions, which are, when were you a boy? When did you stop being a boy? When do you feel most like a boy? And then finally, after being a boy, what did you become? And so that's the prompt of the zine, right? Is this kind of emphasis on encouraging readers to think about what it means to be a boy, right? Play with that idea. And so in the zine, as you can see here, this is Beth Sheehan's work. They kind of responded to these questions and did some written responses with them and submitted them. Yeah. And so then by kind of putting all of these artworks together in these written responses, kind of responding to these questions, we kind of create a BL text, a BL manga in some ways, that kind of questions static notions of masculinity, static notions of boyhood, and it kind of recreates this community of readers of quote unquote BL, because you realize that you're thinking about what it means to be a boy. There's actually other people who are also similarly questioning creatively what that means and putting their own responses and their own identifications on the page for others to engage with, right? So yeah, that's kind of what I've got going here with the BL zine. So, and then it's organized by those 4 questions, and then finally at the end, just a little brief write up. Yeah.
Right. That is really, really cool.
Thank you.
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
So you said that this is volume 1 and you're looking for volume 2. Are you hoping to have a continuous run of these, or is it just sort of like as long like do you have long-term plans, or
well, I think it's kind of just as I have energy, right? I don't know where I'm finishing up my degree, but volume 2 will be out kind of early. We'll do a physical distribution kind of in May and June, probably late May, early June. And I also have an ongoing call for this online community I'm a part of in NeoCities, specifically being distributed to a BL kind of web ring of fans. And so I'm also going to create like a volume Neo version for that community as well. And I think the question, I really am, at least currently, really in love with the questions and really super excited by whenever I ask these questions to people, what their responses are. And so as long as I think, excited and have the energy, I hope to kind of keep seeing the zine or the project change going into the future. But right now, yeah, just kind of working on volume 2 and a digital online version for the community I'm involved in.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you are finishing up your thesis. You graduate in May, I assume.
Yep.
So that's coming up soon, because right now is second week in April.
Yeah, well, I guess I technically graduate over the summer, but yeah, my thesis, we're defending in May, or we're defending in April, late April. So yeah.
And then you'll just be done and you'll be doing your revisions. Okay. What's next?
Yeah, I don't know. I have no clue. Definitely open to doing a PhD, continuing on my academic journey. I'm waiting on a series of applications. We're filming this April, 7th, so it's before the April 15th iconic decision date. So just kind of weighing my options. Might continue doing a program here soon. Maybe reapply to PhD programs for kind of the next school year. Might do some Japanese English teaching in Japan, which I've had some experience doing. So yeah, I don't really know. I don't know where the future is going to take me.
Yeah. What do you see? This is a really hard question. Very
I'm
hard.
excited. Yeah.
When you look in your future, how do you think you'll measure whether you've been successful or not?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a fantastic question. I mean, I think as academics, or I've experienced a lot of when I first started in undergrad, a lot of my self-worth came directly from how well I was doing in my academic spaces, what I was achieving in them. And then as I sort of found this community on NeoCities and also started embracing the kind of personal individual passions I have for BL in my scholarship, I started to see that relationship change a lot. And in fact, my kind of self-worth comes from engaging with these meaningful communities and these meaningful texts to me, right? And utilizing the resources I have from the academic world to kind of serve them and serve those communities, and serve myself a bit, my personal fan identity. So I hope to continue to cultivate that relationship. And I think right now, as long as I kind of continue to feel that love and work from that space of love, that fanish love that is so emphasized on generosity and sharing, then I found really successful kind of responses to those inner critics, or the meritocratic system we exist in academia. I mean, I definitely have to still apply to all of those awards and apply to all of those programs and apply for the same grants and all of that. But I found, the rejection or the even, getting the awards and that being its own process of signposting, by kind of just leaning into this work that I do and its emphasis on giving back, I found, success personally, and feeling happy with what I'm doing. But I would really love to see, I guess, like more specific dreams or goals would be some sort of like large scale fan archive, where there's a large group of fans able to gather in some sort of digital space and contextualize and research the objects that they care about, in a similar way that I'm doing, in that university space, and then be able to show that online for others and to be a part of like kind of a larger ecosystem of sharing and research about their works that they love. So
Yeah. So exciting. I can't wait to see what you do next. It's going to be fun. It's really going to be fun.
I'm excited.
Is there anything else you would like to share with us before we wrap up?
Yeah, no, I mean, submit to my zine, please.
Yeah.
That would be so fantastic. Yeah. And thank you so much for having me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
The experience in digital humanities has been very warm and welcoming. There's, I think, there's like a bit of that. I've noticed, I feel, in the limited experiences I've had in digital humanities academic spaces, is there definitely seems to be a bit of that fanish excitement and giving. So I'm excited to kind of do more work with you guys and be more in this space. So, and this is a great embodiment of that. So I've had a great time.
DH tends to be like DH practitioners tend to be people who are expressing their nerdiness in digital ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you see DH projects on the most eccentric things sometimes.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's, oh, I never thought about that very specific question.
Yeah.
Also, it's a very generous community as far as skills sharing. Like, I know how to do something and you need to learn how to do it. Well, let's sit down for an afternoon and crank it out,
Yeah, totally.
And a lot of creativity and exploration. I know a couple of years ago, I went up to the Digital Humanities Summer Institute to take a a JavaScript class.
Mm.
And it was just fun to sit in a room of 20 people learning how to do JavaScript for a week.
Mhm.
And everybody was so very creative with it, because by the end of the week, like several people had like used their JavaScript to make like Fibonacci
Oh, yeah,
like the
spirals.
sequences
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
like colors and all these algorithms that do all kinds of really fun things. And it was just like
Mhm.
such a creative space.
Mm.
And everybody had so much joy. It was like
Yeah.
the funnest weeks in a while.
Yeah. So
And
that's
it's
the
just
power of
like,
DH for
this is
sure.
just so much fun. I just like, my job is to just sit at this computer and
Yeah.
do something fun with JavaScript for a week.
Yeah. I'm going to a like similar digital humanities in East Asian studies thing over the summer, and I'm sure it will have that same vibe of like we're all
Yeah.
coming from these things that we love and then exploring and
Yeah, it's just like
creatively
summer camp.
navigating. Yeah.
It's summer
So that's
camp.
awesome.
Like you go and eat at the cafeteria and sleep in the dorm and hang out with your classmates for a week
Yeah.
that
That's
you
so
didn't
awesome.
know before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, can't wait for my version of that.
It's gonna be great. I'm glad you're going.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your generosity today, Aidan. I'm so thrilled that we were able to have you on this podcast.
Yes.
I love being able to showcase our graduate students' work. We have some really creative graduate students on this campus that are doing just very exciting things, and I'm super happy to be able to have this conversation with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been a
You're
pleasure.
welcome. You're welcome.
This episode of ADHC Talks has been brought to you from the campus of the University of Alabama. This is Sarah Whitfer. Join us again next time to hear more about DH folks and their super cool projects. Goodbye.